mentioned them are on your airlines, like your brake hoses. Those have fittings. They're not clamps or anything of that nature. What is this called here?
The coolant reservoir.
That's right, and you forget, it says it on the sticker, coolant.
Yeah.
Okay, don't overthink it. Coolant reservoir is properly mounted and secured, not cracked or broken. It is filled to the proper level.
Has a cap,
It's got a cap present, no missing nuts and bolts, and
it's not leaking coolant.
It's not leaking what?
Coolant.
Coolant, that's right. It's not leaking coolant. Antifreeze or water, whichever one of the three you want to pick. Now, I highly recommend, and you're going to see in your training, I'm going to have you pause for a second, right? Once you're done with a section, take your time, talk to yourself, wash your reservoir, AC hoses. What am I doing here?
Following the hoses.
AC compressor, but more so. I already talked about it. Why am I doing it again?
Belts.
I'm making sure I got everything right.
Yeah.
Hoses, AC, belts.
Following everything that connects to each other.
Water pump, belt, hoses, coolant. Making sure I didn't skip anything.
Yeah.
You're reviewing, like in school, right? Elementary.
Yeah.
What did our teacher tell us? Check your work.
Check your work twice.
Right? Why would you do it in something this important? Check your work.
Yeah.
And it took me what, 5 seconds? It's not gonna make the world of a difference. Come on over here. All right. We're gonna start off here with your power steering reservoir. If you don't remember what it is, it's on top of the cap itself too, okay? Just as a reminder. That is allowable as long as it's from factory. We can't go start writing on things and putting stickers, etc. Power steering reservoir. It is properly mounted and secured, not cracked or broken, filled to the proper level. It is not leaking power steering fluid. The cap is on and secured, and no missing bolts and nuts. Even if you don't see the nuts, you gotta say bolts and nuts. If it's threaded into a metal plate, still consider it a nut.
Yeah.
No missing nuts and bolts. Underneath it, connected to it, are your power steering hoses. Power steering hoses are properly mounted and secured, not cut, frayed, or damaged, and not leaking any what?
Power steering fluid.
That's right. Power, it's in the name, right? And not missing any bolt clamps. Okay. Up top, what is this?
Radiator hose.
That's right. It's a hose. It connects to your radiator. It's a radiator hose, right? Don't overthink it sometimes. Some of these things are super easy when you dumb it down a little bit. Radiator hose is properly mounted and secured, not cut, frayed, or damaged, not leaking any coolant, not missing any bolt clamps. My engine oil fill, you can treat as plastic or metal, whichever you prefer. My engine oil fill is properly mounted and secured, not cracked or broken. The cap is on and present or secured, and not leaking
Oil. Engine oil.
engine oil, right? Get in the habit of being specific. Engine oil dipstick. My engine oil dipstick is properly mounted and secured, not cracked or broken, not leaking any engine oil, and it is filled to the proper level. Okay, this one we use to check the level, correct?
Yes, sir.
Push it out, push it back in.
Do we gotta take it out when we're in the thing or no?
Yes,
Yeah.
to a certain extent. You don't expect you to clean it up, check the
Okay.
level, anything like that. You're taking it out, pushing it back in. Telling them you know how it works. This right here, what is that?
That's your alternator.
That's right, don't forget about it. Your alternator is properly mounted and secured, not cracked, bent, or broken, no illegal welds, no missing nuts and bolts, and is what?
Belt driven.
Belt driven. Alternator belt is properly mounted and secured, not cracked, not frayed, no loose fibers, and no signs of wear, and has no more than 3/4 inch of play at the center. On the back side of the alternator, we're going to talk about your electrical connections. You're pointing to the back side of it, the housing on the back end of the alternator. Alternator electrical connections, you treat them like hoses. They're properly mounted and secured, not cut, frayed, or damaged, and have no what?
No illegal welds. I don't know. It's the
Connections.
connections. There's a
What's inside a connector? What does the alternator do?
Exposed wires.
Exposed wires, that's right. And have no exposed wires.
Yeah.
Instead of leaks, you're making sure none of the wires are
wires
coming
are-
out. What happens if a wire touches a metal?
just un corto.
That's right. And then after a short, what happens to the truck?
Dies off because you fry it, don't it?
The whole thing burns to the ground, more so. These trucks are very, very flammable. You have 1,000 gallons of diesel behind you, right? I'm exaggerating a bit, but look how much ignition fluid you got,
Yeah.
right? Careful. You always want to check everything correctly. Before we move on to everything that connects itself, there are a couple components that you cannot see. Knock them out of the park right now. The air compressor. You have to tell them it's located underneath the truck. If you don't tell them where it's at, they're going to default to that you do not know where it's at. They're not going to ask you. They're not going to read your mind. They're going to say, oh, he didn't point to it. He doesn't know where it's at. The air compressor that is located underneath the truck is properly mounted and secured, not cracked, bent, or broken, no illegal welds, no missing nuts and bolts, not leaking air. What else? Am I done?
No. It has no air leaks.
No air leaks? Is that it?
And it has its bolt clamps or no?
No, the compressor itself,
Oh, the compressor
not
itself.
the hoses.
No wires, right?
Anybody else? Anybody? It is gear driven.
Oh, gear driven.
Okay, it is not belt driven. It moves with the gears in the transmission. Okay,
Oh.
gear driven. It's pumped.
All right.
My air hoses also underneath the truck are properly mounted and secured, not cut, frayed, or damaged, not leaking air. That's it. Because they're air hoses, they don't have bolt clamps. Now we go back to the stuff we can see. My steering column and universal joints. They are both properly mounted and secured, not cracked, bent, or broken, no illegal welds, and no missing nuts and bolts. My steering gearbox is properly mounted and secured, not cracked, bent, or broken, no illegal welds, no missing nuts and bolts, and is not leaking any what? Power steering fluid, right? Power steering gearbox is leaking power steering fluid. This is called your pitman arm. Your pitman arm is properly mounted and secured, not cracked, bent, or broken, no illegal welds, and not missing what?
The castle nut and the cotter pin.
That's right, those are these two over here. For those of you guys who don't know, castle nut and the cotter pin goes right through it, okay? For the next three components, back there, you're gonna say the same exact definition, but no, you cannot bunch them together. You gotta say them separately, okay? Drag link is properly mounted and secured, not cracked, bent, or broken, no illegal welds, and not missing the castle nut or the cotter pins. My upper and lower control arms are now properly mounted and secured, not cracked, bent, or broken, no illegal welds, and they are not missing the castle nut and the cotter pins either. My tie rod, that's in the very back. That's this right there. My tie rod is properly mounted and secured, not cracked, bent, or broken, no illegal welds, and the castle nut and the cotter pin are both present. Now we're jumping to the front. My leaf spring mount. Okay, we're gonna follow this line of path. We'll be back. My leaf spring mount is properly mounted and secured, not cracked, bent, broken, no illegal welds, no missing nuts and bolts. My leaf springs are properly mounted and secured, not cracked, bent, broken, no illegal welds, and they have not shifted. What do we mean by shifted?
They haven't slid or moved like that to make them uneven.
Right? They're supposed to be right on top of each other, parallel with each other. If this one is not sitting directly above this one, something happened to your suspension or the bolt broke loose. These two are U-bolts. My leaf spring U-bolts are properly mounted and secured, not cracked, bent, or broken, no illegal welds, no missing nuts and bolts. My hydraulic shock absorber is properly mounted and secured, not cracked, bent, or broken, no illegal welds, not missing any nuts and bolts, and is not leaking what?
Hydraulic, the fluid.
What was it?
Oil.
Hydraulic fluid, right? Hydraulic fluid. This right here is called what?
The frame.
What kind of frame?
The truck frame.
Truck frame, because you got a trailer frame also as well, right? You got your truck frame. It is properly mounted and secured, not cracked, bent, or broken, no illegal welds, no missing nuts and bolts, and no illegal holes, right? For those of you guys that do not know, an illegal hole is a hole that you made that does not serve a purpose. You can't just go and drill a hole in a frame and leave it open. If you drill it, it's got to serve a purpose, a modification, or if you made a mistake, put a bolt through it or weld it, patch it, something. You cannot leave it open. Now we're gonna work our way out of the frame towards the wheel. But this right here, what is this?
Brake lines.
Brake hoses or brake lines, correct. Your brake hoses are properly mounted and secured, not cut, frayed, or damaged, and what else?
Not leaking brake fluid.